But if we do, what I will do is send them to Dialis, to our chair, and ask her if she can pass it on to CPC. No one at the full board meeting did make any comments. I don't know what else we can do, because I don't want, if we do have comments or recommendations, I don't want to miss our chance to say something. So that's my thought, unless somebody has another option. You can think about it. Anyway, why don't we get started, Mr. Lambino?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, everyone. I appreciate it. Sorry to bother you with this matter again, or at least, happy to give you the opportunity to comment as much as you'd like. I'd like to share this. Give me a second here. That's not it.
While he's sharing, can we just establish that there are 9 members present?
There are 10 members. You might not see Simon Weiser, but he's here.
Okay.
He's in spirit. No, just a joke. Sorry.
I'm here.
He's here. His voice is here.
Okay.
I have a question, is why isn't the board voting on this?
My preference is the board would vote on it. The problem is it didn't come to us until tonight. It came before the full board on October 13th. Now it's here, and as you know, my idea of a special board meeting was soundly ignored. So the next board meeting comes after November 9th. I don't know what, I mean, I want us to be able to.
It's not a ULURP item, so it doesn't have a clock of 60 days. But they're giving you so many days to make comments and to provide any comments that you have. It's not a normal land use matter. We usually get a clock on it. There was a letter that said, here's what we have, and you can make comments by November 9th.
So what's the date of the letter?
The letter's dated September 9th, but we didn't get it right then. We got it afterwards.
I'm open to suggestions. Anything you all want to do.
Well, we asked for an extension, so
well, we might be able to. I don't know. That's another possibility. I just Dave, do you know? Do you have any idea if we can ask for an extension?
I'm sure you can. I think we've been trying to get this on the calendar for several, for a few months now. The refinery is certainly not going anywhere. So if people have really substantive comments here tonight, I think they'll, and you need more time to get them to city planning, then that's a legitimate, that seems like totally legitimate request.
I think the next board meeting is on the 10th. Am I correct? November 10th?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would, if we have any comments that we talk about tonight, I would then be presenting that on the 10th to the community board. They would vote on it on the 10th. And then I guess by the 11th, it could be in. So I would hope, city planning would give us an extra 2 days. If you're all willing to take that chance, I just don't know what to do. I mean, I don't want this to go through without the full board hearing it. The only reason I would even consider it is that they've already heard the presentation and no one made any comments. But that's not my preference. Even though it's not a land use and we're not really voting, but we will vote in that we'll agree tonight on whether we have any recommendations. Maybe what I could do is contact Dialis and say that if we have any recommendations, contact Dialis, tell her that we have these recommendations from the committee, and ask her if she will ask city planning to give us an extra 2 days. How does that sound? Anybody?
I'm happy to also tell city planning that we would welcome the extension if that's useful.
Okay.
That's a very good idea, Del.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. That's what I'll do. And if city planning says, you know what, I don't think they'll say no. That's what we'll do. That's the right thing to do. You're right, Steve. Okay. Dave?
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
You're muted.
Can you see what I'm trying to present? Is there a
Yes.
presentation? Yes.
Well, there's something there, but there's a big window blocking it that says,
It's cut off. There's only like the first quarter of it on the
There's a
left
big
side.
gray,
Oh,
part of it's grayed out. There's a big
Right.
gray
okay.
Right.
square in the front of it.
Oh,
Now it's gone.
there it is.
All right. All right. Thanks for your patience. So yeah, basically what we're here to do today is to make a minor modification to the previously approved 2014 rezoning that would allow for the LPC and CB1 approval of the changed refinery design to move forward. So basically, there was if you look at this picture, the picture on the left was the design of the refinery that was approved by this community board and ultimately the city council back in 2013 and 2014. It went through an extensive redesign with a different architect, where we went from basically a stepped roof design to a domed roof design. There were a number of other minor changes, including opening up the ground floor to make it more public. These, I brought those before this board a few years ago, and we had a good discussion. Ultimately, it was approved. It was then approved by LPC. The building is now, governed by LPC in the sense that all of our means and methods and the scope of our eventual, restoration and construction there is overseen by that agency. But basically, there was a change in the shape of the roof. Our drawings and our documents from 2014 don't reflect that. So city planning asked us if we could go back today to change the ULURP drawings such that they reflect the approved LPC plans for this site. I wish I had I could be clearer about that. It's complicated. We're obviously eager to get going with the refinery. I know you've seen it and been past it. We've started repointing the bricks on the north side of on the south side of the refinery building. We've braced the building. We've demolished the insides. We're hopeful that when we're done restoring the facade, that'll take about 12 months. That at that point we will consider what the market conditions, where we are in the world, et cetera, and whether to begin construction in earnest of the interior of the refinery. So just so you know where we are with it, that's where we stand today. So
Just a quick question, Dave. Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed there's a tower crane erected inside the building. So is that related to the facade work or is it for something else? Or?
Yeah, that's related to the facade work. Yep. But hopefully soon you'll see, you'll be able to make out the restored bricks. I mean, you can now if you look closely. But that's the process that's taking place across the whole facade. Did I lose you? I can't hear you. Are there other questions or comments?
Oh, I guess, I'm sorry, I was muted. Why wasn't city planning's need for the revised drawings anticipated when you changed the roof design with landmarks?
Great question. Unfortunately, you're dealing with a big project like this with a lot of moving pieces. Things are, aren't so clear what you need to have in order to pull a building permit down the road. I think, we had all assumed that the changes were modest enough.
That wasn't a modest change. That was a huge change.
that the building wasn't getting any bigger, let's put it that way, that the height wasn't growing, that the bulk wasn't growing, that it wasn't the kind of change that would trigger the need for this minor mod.
Basically, you're just filing the drawings of the barrel roof and the changes to the first floor with city planning, and because what's currently with city planning is the original design with the original roof design. Is that?
That's right. That's right. Here are the
Well, assuming at some point you do move forward with constructing the entire building, how long would construction last for that?
It'll take about, from today, we have another 10 to 12 months of facade work. At that point, we can decide to hopefully right then go ahead and build the rest of the project. It would be 24 months of interior construction and fitting out of the space.
So 3 years.
Yep.
And the only thing you'll build is what you intended to build. It'll always stay office space because that's what the ULURP is. It's whether you do it now or do it later.
Yeah, that's right. It's office space. There's retail at the base of the building. It's less than we were allowed to build in terms of office. We elected to build slightly less based on the building design and the market conditions than we were permitted for. But it's still very much the heart of the site. We intend to build it out as office, as creative class office. We're excited to do so. Obviously the office market has changed considerably in the last 6 to 8 months, but we remain committed to seeing the project through.
So can you just tell us how this is really getting off the point, but just a question, which is not relevant to this, but it's relevant to us as a committee.
Sure.
In your opinion, how has the demand for office space changed and the market changed?
It's hard to say precisely how it's changed in Williamsburg. It was always a unique market, distinct from Midtown Manhattan, from Lower Manhattan, even different from Dumbo, where we have about 2 million square feet of commercial office. A lot of small and medium-sized businesses are struggling. Those are the types of tenants that we would seek to lease to in Williamsburg. It was always our vision that it would be folks who lived in the community, who rather than wanting to commute to Manhattan to go to the office, would like space in Williamsburg and in iconic building, obviously like the refinery. We did build some commercial space in Williamsburg at 10 grand, which is the building that's part under the same roof as 1 South First Street. That leasing started at the beginning of the year. We obviously had significant, leasing was not happening for 6 to 8 months. It's picked up since. We've leased about 3 floors out of 15 in the building, and we're encouraged by the kind of traffic that we're getting. But that project, we obviously made the decision to build that project 3 or 4 years ago. That's kind of where we are now with respect to the refinery, looking out at what it would be like to have the refinery ready for leasing in 2020, 2023, 2024. So that's kind of where our mindset is now.
Is the project at the foot of Metropolitan Avenue, the proposed project, does that have commercial or is that strictly residential? And then whatever community amenities, like the YMCA?
That's mostly residential. That's mostly residential, about 90% residential.
And what is the status of the other residential buildings that are planned as part of the Domino project?
Sure. We are in design development for the 3rd building. We've picked an architect. She's working on it's the building. It's the building at the southern end of the site, closest to the Williamsburg Bridge.
The super top.
That's not what we call it. It's what we call Site D, but has 2 skinny, towers going about 50 or 5, just over 500 feet. And that's residential. There's also a 600-person school in the base of that building, public school, district-wide, K through 8. We're told that we've designed and are eager to build. But so we're in design development there. We can pick that up.
What does it mean to be in design development? What's the timeline for something like that when it's in design development?
We lost him.
We lost him.
Marie, is there some way to get Dave back?
I don't know. I see
He's
him.
got to
But
do it himself.
I see him. He's still on the panel, but he might have lost his connection. So he has to.
It seems like what's being asked is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be.
I know at the time when it came for landmarks, there was a lot of discussion, and ultimately it was approved by the board. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we need to feel required to make some kind of a statement. But I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity.
He's
Back.
He's back.
Of course.
Welcome back.
Well, what's the timeline, Dave, for the Site D building if it's in design development? What does that mean? How many years till there's a building?
It could be 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
I have a question, Dave, also a curiosity.
Sure.
When you spoke about small and medium business in relation to the office, I don't know, maybe the commercial is the retail, but in relation to the office, just a curiosity I want to know, what it was the size? What's in terms of square footage? What's a small business? Or at least what it was your target as a small, what it was your target as a medium, to understand in what scale and what percentage, both for the Domino and also for the Grand, whatever adaptation you have to do lately because of the economic change.
Sure. In Dumbo, where we have a large office portfolio, our sweet spot is roughly 1,500 square feet to 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. So not, a large, a large apartment at the lower end on up. And that can accommodate, a business of, between 10 and 30 people, and that's kind of our sweet spot in Dumbo. At 10 grand, the floor plates are 6,000 square feet. So we've leased them as a whole floor, and we're leasing them as well as a half floor. So you can, get studios, 3,000 square feet at 10 grand.
Del, just
You're
want to
mute, Sente.
note, oh, sorry. I just
You're
want to say
muted, Sante.
there's a
Wait.
question in the Q&A panel.
Okay. I don't see it. Let's see.
Sante, I didn't hear your response there. You
There
were
is a question.
You see it? I don't see it.
Yes, the separate question about Domino. What is the delay on the affordable housing release at South First? Is the new requirement to be eligible for the 421A abatement that the building be 30% affordable instead of 20%? In addition to a change in AMI. But this was already. What is the
Sure.
delay on the release on South First? But I think you answered that question already. You said it's going to be about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, different. I think
that's a different subject.
Corey and Keith are referring to a different question entirely. They're talking about One South First, which is connected to 10 grand, where we've built, about 300 units of housing, and where, the affordable remains vacant. It's a huge problem. We've alerted our local state reps, and as well as HPD, the state of New York, the governor's office, waving our arms, trying to tell people that we're eager to preserve the affordability levels that were part of our agreement with this community. And we have as it currently sits, we're eager to do 20% of the units there at 80% of AMI or below, which is considered, a fairly deep level of affordability. We have the option. So tomorrow we could change it and do 30% of the units at 130% of AMI. And from what I've heard from folks in the community, housing advocates generally across the city, that 130% of AMI is not affordable housing.
Affordable.
So we are working with our local electeds, working with the city and state to try to amend the law that changed a year and a half ago that limited our ability to lease the units at the 80% of AMI we promised.
I thought even under the new rules, you were allowed to do it below the 130. So you could do 20% at 80 and 10%, above the 80.
We are, but why we're stuck in this knot is an unintended consequence. It was never anybody's idea to try to stick it to Williamsburg and Greenpoint and say, all of your units have to be 130% of AMI. You guys don't know it, but there are other buildings in the neighborhood that have just gone ahead and done what I described, which is say, okay, we'll do 30 at 130. And there are other buildings in the neighborhood that have done that. What we're trying to do is say, hey guys, that wasn't our agreement. You guys didn't mean to do this in Albany, but you did. And can you make some changes, or very simple change, that would allow us to go through with what we promised?
So therefore, what you're entertaining is 20% at the highest 80% AMI?
Yep, 80% and below.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There'll be some at 60 and some at 80.
And that was an original.
Is that the lowest? The lowest is 60% AMI?
So at the first building at Domino, we did 40 and 50% of AMI. So deep levels of affordability, 105 affordable units, 50% given to Community Board 1 residents or homeless, formerly homeless families. That worked out great. One of the programs that we had utilized no longer existed. Now the lowest that we're able to offer the AMIs is at 80%, 60 and 80%. The second building, which is still a lot better than what's going on in the rest of the neighborhood, what's going on in the rest of the city. Deep levels of affordability. I can send you guys the rent roll, the rent levels and the income levels, but pretty, significant, definitely affordable housing.
All right, well, I've allowed us to get way off, and so
Yeah,
Dave, you
I have
apologize
stayed
for.
too long. I've stayed
Okay.
longer than I should, and I'm going to get pinged for that. I'm sure my husband is waiting outside.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Maria.
you.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like the committee is content not to put in any recommendations or comments. Am I right?
Yeah, I guess could I just make a motion to basically approve this application as is? I mean,
We don't even have to approve. It's just a matter of we've decided that we don't have any comments to add.
Great.
okay.
Okay. And thank you, Maria. Okay. Thank you, Dave. So you apologize for taking up our time, but now this is the cost of coming to the committee. Now we've taken up your time with all kinds of, extraneous questions that are important to all of us. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Del, can I come in?
Sure.
I didn't mean to cut off Sante. I just wanted to make people aware of that question, but I just want to make sure Sante's question was fully answered about the sizes of businesses.
No, I believe it was answered. I was trying to understand what the target was. Also, will help us in the future to define, when you speak about commercial and offices, what is the target when you say you are a small business? That is not 10,000 square feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, I want to make a fast comment about, I didn't understand exactly what the changes are. I know we've been speaking, they are kind of irrelevant. Height didn't change, the building is not changing. Are we fully aware that there is really that we can blindly say, oh, yes, and we don't need to comment at all?
We approved the new design when it went through landmarks about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Dave, I remember.
So Sante, we've actually approved this design, but we approved it under the landmarks. Now, city planning is saying, well, you're going to be changing. You're going to now have to conform those pictures, that design with your land use papers, but it's the same. It's exactly the same as what we already approved.
Okay.
So. Can we move on? Because I would like to give a report with respect to the second matter, and to report to everyone about the meeting that Steve Chesler and Trina and I had with Ben Solitaire and Brian Paul.
Okay, Marie, could you please remove Dave's presentation screen?
I'm trying to. I think he had to because he had the presenter key.
And thank you, Dave. We're not going to make any comments. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I thought what we could do is I could start the report about the meeting that I'm saying Steve Chesler because we do have two Steves on the committee, that Steve Chesler and Trina and I had with Ben Solitaire and Brian Paul. I don't know if everybody knows who Brian Paul is. I had to ask Trina what his official title is. He's the senior project manager at City Hall Land Use Division. And I'm still not clear as to what his position entails.
I think he advises the councilman on land use issues, works in the council office. That's why when we asked Ben for some help, he thought that Brian would be a good person to help us.
Okay, and he does seem very knowledgeable about the process. So essentially, we wanted to have the meeting because remember we were talking about finding out if there are precedents for conditioning an approval on having a developer contribute to things that they have impacted. And so we decided that we would meet with Ben, and then Ben brought in Brian. So let me just start by saying that the first, we actually talked, in my head, I just divided this into two sections. The first section for myself was we talked specifically about the Acme Fish development. And because remember, we were also talking about what our concerns were about Acme Fish. And then more generally, we talked about how the community board could become more effective and involved in applications, not just with respect to asking about a developer coming in to take on responsibility for some infrastructure, but just in general, to how can we be more effective in getting involved before a project is certified. So specifically with respect to Acme Fish, Ben Solitaire essentially said that we should probably have a letter approved by the community board to send to Steve Levin, explaining to him what our concerns were, and then asking him to work with the developer at this point. I just thought that, well, Steve must know what we discussed because we presented our concerns in writing and verbally as our land use report at the community board. But Ben said, no, it doesn't necessarily get sent. Our reports don't necessarily get sent to the council members. And I guess, when we're all there in person, it's easy to look up and see, oh, okay, Steve Levin's here or his representative is here. And we know that the message got sent on. But I think at this point, we have to be careful to make sure that if we have something we want passed on to a particular official, we'll have to be more, be careful, not more careful, but be careful to make sure that we send something specifically directly to that person, that elected. Now, Ben did assure us that he would pass on verbally to Steve the fact that we were concerned that the developer hadn't justified the size of the ancillary building. But he said that really it would behoove us to send a letter to Steve. So I took it upon myself to just start drafting a possible letter, and then please let's come discuss it and see what you want to say. But if you don't mind, if I could just read briefly something like telling the council member, telling Steve Levin, the board recognizes the value of Acme's continued presence in the community. However, the board is concerned about the large bulk and height of the proposed ancillary building and the effect it will have on the nearby residential Greenpoint Historic District and the Bushwick Inlet Park. The board questions the need for such a sizable development given the moderate increase in space that Acme will get for its business. The board also questions the likely financial profit to Acme and the benefit to the community from the proposed office space, given the unused office spaces already present in the community. Accordingly, the board requests that the council member ask the developer to downsize its development and then possibly, and I don't know if this is something we want, possibly not larger than the development at 25 Kent Avenue. And that's what I came up with. So maybe we can, talk about that, talk about presenting a letter to the full board to see if, we could pass it on to Steve Levin, and maybe he can talk to the developer before it gets certified.
Yeah, I think that letter is pretty much spot on with all the major points. Just one other thing that I think the council members actually working on it, but is they have no requirement to keep manufacturing there. So if Acme decides to leave, then it's kind of an open book as far as what could replace their business. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but if we want to preserve or attempt to preserve manufacturing on that block and in that area.
Well, that's one of their selling points for bringing the project through, that they are retaining that manufacturing.
Right.
Right, I'm saying, but if Acme decides to, it's not working out, we want to be bought out by Rubenstein, and they move their operation fully to North Carolina or whatever, then I don't know, they could just put in a bunch of, I don't know what they wouldn't have to put in another factory there. They have another factory tenant. They could have just retail or what have you. And
so we would want to request to have a requirement that the 4-story building that's being made for Acme be remain zone manufacturing. Will that building itself be manufacturing and the other, as opposed to commercial, which is what the other building is? Will the zoning for the Acme building be different?
well, I don't think there's no requirement for it. So
It won't have a use?
I assume there's an allowable use for that would enable them to continue to operate there. I assume. There's no mention of a special permit or anything to allow them to be a part of that M15.
What do we think about saying that maybe if they could scale it more like the 25 Kent, would that be acceptable?
I just sent Steve a picture that I took today from North 15th. I walked into where Bushwick Inlet Park was, where the Bayside was, and took a picture back, and you see 25 Kent on the right, and then you see Steve, is there a way you can put that picture up? I don't know how to do it, but just so that everyone can see it. It's so crazy how out of scale this building would be.
It's out of scale entirely.
Yeah, that's what I think we should maybe leave. Yeah, not reference.
Not even say 25 Kent. That's fine. I'll leave that out.
Because 25 Kent itself is crazy.
I thought so too, but people seem to think, whoa, well, this is even bigger than 25 Kent. And
yeah, I think they said 9 stories, right? And 25 Kent's only 5 stories.
Yeah.
And what it does then is it frames this low-rise area between the two, and you can just see it all filling up.
Actually, 25 Kent, I think, is 8 or 9 stories.
Oh, it is?
That's 8 stories, I think. I looked it up.
Yeah.
All right, so that's...
Also, if I can say something.
Sure.
I read extensively. I read it and reread it. I know probably you have done it too. The description, proposal. I read all the past documentation. It was available at the city planning website. And truly, I can't digest this, and I tell you why. There are many points which they really sit very uncomfortably to me. And I expressed I love Acme Fish, but Acme Fish owns 60% of this lot. And they bought it 40 years ago. I mean, I saw the transaction, right? The transfer for the grandfather. So this company, which has been thriving, I can tell you, I check all their financial transactions. They make $127 million revenue. They went to North Carolina because they were incentive, right, to go there and get a space at $59 a yard, but you want to be in Brooklyn, you want to be in New York, you pay rent in decades, and now you own the land, you are turning this latest generation, they are turning to become also developer, and I feel that it's kind of like blackmailing us. It's, if you want us to be here, they have a manufacturing in Chile. They've been purchasing all the smoked fish factory in the United States, one in Massachusetts for the Scottish salmon. They're really thriving, So to me, it's not just you getting a new manufacturing space for free, plus you're going to get like a substantial amount of real estate. You becoming a developer, because the developer without Acme Fish and without their ownership, they can go anywhere else. So one. The second point to me, very valuable, and I know the community in the past has support 25 Kent for whatever reason, and I wasn't part of this community board. And I always was against because it was an unprecedented event that created today a precedent, which is like converting an entire block industrial. That 25 Kent, it didn't happen in 40 years. So it was a major event in 40 years. Now, based on that, they want to replicate this, and they want to replicate by taking an entire block. What's the danger of that? Is that I understand that there are many different lots and the Acme Fish has acquired along the year. They could acquire the entire block, but it's very important to maintain the fraction block, because let's say that one day Acme Fish doesn't want to be there. Still those single lots, they are available for smaller factory business. But the moment you unify and you take all these lots, you make an entire block with such a monolithic statement, which is completely unscaled, in reference to Greenpoint, now the 25 Kent, it seems kind of a comparison, right? And I tell you why I'm telling you this. It's a comparison to the William Bell, it's comparison to the large building, but in their proposal, fellow member, they not mentioning the historic district. They mentioned their reference point all on the other side, the William Bell. There is no mention. And so they're pointing on two narratives. One is Acme Fish. There has been they call it an institution, and my English mate, I have to go through the dictionary. You can't call a business an institution. An institution, it's a different type of organization. So they call it an institution. It's a business, it's a corporation. And I believe they have no narrative. The only narrative is like, please let us be there and let us build this 9-story so they can, it's completely, I believe, out of place. But the fractioning, the assembling together all the lot is very dangerous. It's another terrible precedent. And we're going to lose the opportunity in the future for smaller business to acquire 10,000 square feet, but not 580, over 500,000 of square footage. That's going to go in a zoning that is very dangerous. The M15 there. The M15 is the hotel. Well, I don't know what kind of office they're going to go there. Certainly not the 1,500 square feet. But the next change, they want to turn an hotel. And also, to be honest, this is the mission.
That's wrong, Sante. They have to get a special permit to build a
I know.
hotel.
Yeah, they cannot do a hotel in M15. Not anymore, they can't.
But it will, in the future, something will change and it will be allowed. This is one step and not tomorrow. You know what I mean? Not tomorrow. But it's
Also, I find it very disingenuous that they brought, the proposal they brought was called Keep Acme Fish in Brooklyn. I mean, it's really manipulative.
It's very manipulative, right?
Just playing devil's advocate. Yeah, maybe overall they're making 127 million in gross revenue, but, and I assume that's everything, like all their facilities all over the United States. But in that spot, I figure the way a business operates, you want to be, have a significant return on investment for each location. So I just wonder what the cost of operating in, expensive Brooklyn real estate region, and just, overhead of, labor and just keep up machinery, utilities, all that stuff. I mean, I'm not that aware, but I just agree. I think they are an institution in the neighborhood. I mean, people shop there every Friday for years and years and years. And they went original, they smoke fish, Jewish style is, integral part of the cuisine in New York City. So I don't know if I entirely agree that it's not an institution. So, but I'd be curious about the numbers. The numbers. How, why or why not is their factory not sustainable, and why they need to expand? Just is it 30,000 square feet that they're adding on? They need to upgrade their machinery. Is that part of the part of it? I just like get the true story. But I do agree with. I have to say, the more I think about it, I just don't. That aside, just the building such a large structure, 9 stories is just out of control. And where 25 Kent is, that's part of an incentive business zone, 14 blocks, and then going south or north towards the historic district, they don't have that option, and it provides a buffer in terms of bulk between this, this business zone and the residential historic district. So, so I don't know. I think just noting in this letter, significant reduction in height and bulk, which is even like spreading it out. I think that's what I do, is spreading it out if they're going to do it.
To downsize its development significantly.
They were also the one, when there was the rezoning, that they request for the zoning to be maintained in M3. I'm assuming that Adam Kaslow was still very young at the time, was still probably studying. There was the other generation, so they were very careful. We want to have the M3-1. And they didn't open the other factory in North Carolina yet. Now, once you have opened your large facility there in North Carolina and you have developed other facility elsewhere, I believe it's a great opportunity, to turn into the real estate. Honestly, I have friends that just built now in San Francisco, and they are a clothing business, and they invest a lot of money. They invest doing projection on their manufacturing for 30 years. They have to buy the space, build the structure. Now with COVID, they're having also some problem. But what I'm trying to say, they own the space. If you want to invest 5-10 million, you project it as a business in 20 years, in 30 years, especially if you're really doing well. I don't think the community has to pay for the new factory, which is not going to turn also into having a factory for free, plus having real estate for free, because that is going to be, I'm assuming, I don't know the number, will be, as Steve said, would be interesting to know, but I don't think we're entitled to know what the business deal is. But the logic, you own the space, already, and so to me, whatever they want to do, I don't agree. I don't agree to the scale. And again, I repeat it, I don't agree to unify the block. It's something that take away diversity, even architectural diversity. The building are not beautiful, but it's that narrative of the old warehouse. Look at what we're going to have, another monolithic, block. Once again, is the monetization of our, even our industrial fabric. This is not a be against modernity and the future. It's this to have a vision, which is a different vision of the future that looks back at our past.
So,
And
Sante, I think that
that's all.
in a sense, you're kind of preaching to the choir here. I think, well, I actually haven't heard from you, William, but I think that we've actually already agreed that we on all of the things that you've just said, and that was what we presented to the full board, Now, if we, what Ben suggested was that we send a letter to Steve at this point so that maybe he can put some pressure on them. And then ultimately, I guess it's going to come back to the board. There are people who feel strongly about Acme, that they are an institution being used in a different way, being used as something that has become a significant part of the flavor of this community, so to speak, and the character of this community. Question is it so important to the community that the community would actually want to allow them to impose this huge structure on us, and this huge increase in bulk and height and stress on traffic and on the infrastructure in general.
It changes the character of the neighborhood.
It does.
Technically.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. So we have this letter. If I will put it in the report, and so then everybody, you will all be able to see the letter, and then when we come to the full board meeting, you can all, ask to add or subtract or change the letter. At least we have something. We have a basis here, a draft of a letter. I'll put it in the as an attack or as part of our committee report.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll all see it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was to say, there was something I wanted to kind of bring up tonight to build on that meeting and your and Trina's, kind of initiative on this whole thing is, environmental items.
Okay.
Just in general, just with new applications for rezonings that come through, consider how they're adapting their designs to deal with climate change. Like, can they create a carbon zero building where they're not burning fossil fuels to heat and cool the building, or for electrifying the for power, etc. And the there's a whole issue that's being daylighted is bird window collisions. It's just happening on a massive scale during spring and fall migrations, and buildings can have their windows formatted in a certain way where it can reduce the number of those.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's really bad in the financial district in Midtown and around Central Park, where they stop over to refuel. I see them, just throughout, just even in Greenpoint, in small
I
numbers.
actually had a bird stuck on my balcony a few weeks ago because of that. They couldn't figure out the glass.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Is there a fix for it, Steve? Is there a way to build a glass building?
Well, that's what I was going to suggest is maybe that the environmental committee examine these items in more detail and come up with specific language, with data to back them up, and that we can recommend to the land use committee to in their toolbox in terms of either, like in a situation where we're preemptively writing, contacting our council member, an application, and then maybe further down the line when we're in ULURP, to note conditions, either yes, if we're doing a yes or a no, but especially a yes, but we want them to attempt to get to carbon zero, to deal with wastewater, stormwater, bird collisions, other things. I think it's just, we got to get up to date on this stuff.
I know
just
that
want
we
to let
asked
you know
Jeff-
that the Audubon Society did a whole study on this
Mm-hmm.
and about bird strikes and designs for buildings. So that might be something anybody
Yes.
might want to look at.
Yep.
It just came out, I think, maybe a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when we asked Jeff about what he was doing in his building for the environment, he looked blankly. And then I said, well, is it a LEED building? And he said, yeah, it's a LEED building, like 25 Kent. But there was no thoughtfulness going into the design having to do with climate change or
Yeah, and I know that
any environmental issues.
the borough president, and a lot of, I know some applications that I've read, that they put that type of language in there. Are they, considering climate, greenhouse gas reductions, those sort of things? So maybe defer to them a little bit. But I thought, I don't know how other committee members feel about that, but
The environmental committee could meet before our next land use meeting and
Mhm.
come up with something to then propose to the committee.
That's great. I think it's important for various committees to communicate to each other, rather than functioning in isolation. There's so much that can be better accomplished and more expeditiously, right? And rather than reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
yeah, because then there's other things that, what came up in Parks and Waterfront Committee the other day is, the big development on West Street between Quay and Oak, they're building
Yeah.
5 massive buildings. They originally had a dog run in their open space design, and then they pulled it off the table. And we just feel like, I think everyone's aware that the dog ownership and situation is just growing exponentially and overwhelming our parks and current dog runs. So I feel like to supplement the public dog runs, I feel like with large developments, they should be urged to create dog runs on their properties. I feel like that's maybe, if it's a residential building, that also be another line item,
Sure, that's something we can add. I was going to mention some more of the more general things that we talked about with
Mhm.
Brian and with Ben. And
That's so important because a lot of our neighbors live by themselves and they adopted 1 or 2 dogs. So
yes,
the population is double or triple, and they really
Yeah.
are not dogs. They're companions are keeping our neighbors' mental health healthy.
absolutely.
Yeah, Steve, we've actually tried at Northside Piers and the Edge to get parks to convert some of the space that is out on our pier into a dog run, and ironically, they won't do it. We've actually been supportive of that, but I definitely agree that that's something we ought to be promoting. There's
Keith,
just
is
too
that
many
something
dogs.
you want to bring to the committee and the committee can talk about it and maybe give you some support? to the
Yeah, I mean,
committee?
happy to. You may know we actually sued the Parks Department, and we did mention that in the lawsuit. So
And just, they're just related to developments. I guess what's called Rose Plaza on Kent Avenue. I don't know what the address is. I think it's currently like certified lumber or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So, that was rezoned, I think, around 2013 for residential. And I think they can put in like 800 units there. And it was just recently sold, and I think the developer's planning to move forward with that development. So I don't think
How does that work? If there was approval given, if something was certified in 2013 and then it gets sold, the person who buys it, if they build it kind of in the same footprint or with the same parameters, can just go ahead and build.
I think so.
Sure, if it's been approved, yeah, or it's as of right, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only, if, with the new resiliency rules for buildings, if they have to modify their waterfront, they might have to come through if they have waivers
Right,
for that.
right. They may have to do that.
Yeah. But I think they're below the 2005 rezoning area, so I don't know what applies, what doesn't apply to what they do over there. But yeah.
Well,
So,
can I just go over some of the things that we discussed in the meeting as general ideas that Ben and Brian gave us that struck me? Now, Trina and Steve, you might, you'll probably have other things that struck you. But what I wrote down here was one of the things that they suggested is when we're looking for, first of all, they said we should all realize how important it is for people to go to the scoping meetings and the scoping hearings rather. And they said that's a very important thing because that's one way we can get our ideas in early on. So we can keep our eyes and ears open for scoping hearings and meetings that are coming up. The other thing is they said that when we are asking for benefits from a developer, we can try to get these benefits built into the zoning so that it's not just so the developer isn't just saying, oh yes, we'll do this, we'll do that. But if we can get it, first we should get it a commitment in writing from the developer that they will do something, or there may be an as of right thing that we don't want them to do and that they put in writing they won't do it. And then we can attempt to get it as part of the zoning so that if they do sell the building, the development, that the buyer is stuck with it. It's within the zoning. The other thing
Or
is
that they also do it, that they actually build what they say they're going to do.
exactly, or they don't build what they promised in writing not to. Although I don't know if we can. I don't know that you get a negative built into the zoning, but we can explore these things. The other thing they said was it's a good idea to ask for things that relate to the project. For instance, they were saying community facilities that are needed in the neighborhood, like a dog run, or like libraries, or a community garden, or a childcare center. But think about what are the things that the community could benefit from. And they said as far as retail things go, ask for the kind of retail you want. Do we want small versus big box? Do we need a supermarket? Do we need a pharmacy? Do we need whatever we want? But put that in there. Be specific. And then when I said the scoping, and then they both mentioned that we can reach out for help. For instance, Brian Paul volunteered himself as a resource, and Richard Barrick's name was brought up, and I've always found Richard to be more than available and willing to talk to us, to come to participate in a committee meeting. He's always there, and he's really a walking computer as far as I'm concerned. So those are the things but I'm sure Trina and Steve, you probably have other things that you want to mention. Oh, the other thing they mentioned was not sure how to research this, but Brian said that we are stuck with a very limited types categories of zoning, like M1-2 or M1-5, or I think, yes. But he said that the community board around in the Gowanus area somehow were able to, that board was able to get the city to allow them to, he calls them tools, to have different tools, zoning tools, so
yeah,
that they're
definitely.
not stuck with just two, zoning.
Yeah, that's really, really important. It's dealing with height and bulk. There's only like up to M1-2, which is like, I think a FIR of 2, and then you go right up to M1-5, which is an FIR of
Which he said is what's happening at Acme Fish. He said that's why they're doing that, because there isn't something in between.
Right.
The zoning.
Right. So in Gowanus, they're creating something with like a three-ish FAR or something like that. So,
And he suggested that we lobby city planning or talk to city planning, at least push to make these things available to developers. So they're going
Yes,
to ask them.
correct. And so that may be something else that we can do. We may want to suggest to the board that they ask city planning to come to a meeting and explain to us what tools the Gowanus plan has and what we need to do to have access to those.
I think
He seemed to
that's,
feel it was possible.
yeah, and I think that's really important because one of the things that I'm worried about if this was to go through for Acme Fish, it just sets a precedent for other developers outside the business zone to go for M15s, you know?
Yes.
So if they could do like an M13 or something with a lot, you know, with a smaller FAR capability, then I think, you know, that would be more palatable than having a wall of 9-story buildings.
Right. And that is what Acme is using. They're saying, well, you know, we only have these two zoning choices, and so the M12 is just too small, so we have to go to M15.
Well, just one note about the M12, if they build a community facility, then they can go up to over 4-point FAR. So I think it's got to be something that's locked into like 3, you know, without any
Yeah.
bonuses to go higher than that.
Yeah.
Wasn't the president really started with the 25 can?
Well, they essentially it was 14 blocks. So,
but the 14 blocks didn't go through. The zoning ended up just being 25 Kent.
Right.
Right.
And they asked for the 14 blocks.
Right, but they can, like, there's two other developers already utilized it within that IBZ. 12 Franklin and one on 13th Street. I forgot the address. And of course, you know, it's weird. It's like 12 Franklin flipped their property.
He also told us about 207 Kent. Is that the address? He said to watch that one.
307.
Or 307.
Yeah, but that already scoped. So
yeah.
But maybe we should preemptively write about that one too.
Well, I remember we put our notes about what we wanted in the scoping, but maybe there should be a letter to Steve Levin about that. And we can just go back to our notes about what we asked for in the scoping and put that in a letter to Steve Levin before it comes to ULURP.
Okay, that's a good idea. I'm hoping I can find my notes.
Well, I think it was the board voted on. I think we all voted on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe Marie can help us.
Okay, 307. Good. When this shutdown came, I just sort of picked everything up and moved to Connecticut, and now I'm back, and I'm half and half in both places and trying to put things together again.
Hey, Dave, are you still listening in? Lamito?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I just totally hypothetical, just with either like, you know, the buildings that are in design for Domino or River Street. You know, it's like, you heard, you know, 80 Flatbush down in downtown Brooklyn. Basically, I understand their buildings totally electric, like they're not using fossil fuels for extensive part of energy in the building. Is that something that Two Trees potentially could, you know, utilize in their projects, either Domino or Two Trees? Is that feasible?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, Steve, is that, you know, and I wasn't prepared for this to discuss this, obviously, but is that electric, you know, is still drawing on questionable sources of, you know, fossil fuel exploration, for example. Like the electric mix is, you know, contains some, you know, sources of energy that are like fracking that are, you know, not, appreciated today. At River Street, we're considering employing a microgrid technology, which is essentially putting batteries in the building, which means, one, that we're independent from the grid, because if there's blackouts, et cetera, we would be a source of energy potentially for neighbors and others, and wouldn't draw down on the grid. The other thing is it takes from, we're able to put, energy back on the grid during downtime. But, it's still, obviously, we think it's a great improvement in the event that New York State gets a cleaner mix of electricity, meaning, they ban the use of certain energy types, methods of exploration, et cetera, and extraction. We could quickly, that would be something we could adopt. Or if like a new clean energy became available, or it's something that we could easily plug in to the microgrid technology. But I'm not sure anyone's really solved that, Steve, from a big picture. I think new construction, whether it's electricity or natural gas, is going to draw down on some fossil fuel, these days.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. But I'm just wondering if, leaving it to, the utilities, our governments to resolve the source issue, but at least on the consuming end, that could be electric or otherwise, that at least after like burning fossil fuel within the within the location, like, and generally in a traditional, say, skyscraper, in terms of heating the building, are burning either oil and or natural gas within the confines of the building. I'm sorry. I'm a novice in terms of building utilities. But.
Yeah, that's the standard. That's the standard. New buildings. Some new buildings are vastly more efficient than the older stock. But yeah, you're right. Whether it's oil, gas, or I guess people are. I know the folks at 80 Flatbush, and they're certainly like pushing the envelope with that technology, and I applaud them. But it's one way or another, it's fossil fuel extraction and energy on some level. There are certain size sites, there you can do solar that helps offset some of the fossil fuel consumption. They tend to be large buildings, in terms of lot area, that can have a big roof that can house that material. Geothermal is an option in some parts of the world. It's unclear to me that the density that's required in residential buildings is, can be sustained only by geothermal. But I'm out of my depth here. But we follow this conversation closely and are thinking about different ways of energy delivery at River Street.
Yeah. Well, no, appreciate your thoughts. And I don't mean to put you on the spot and start a environmental protection committee meeting on the side, but I thought, take advantage that you are here just to get some general thoughts.
Yep, happy to help.
All right. Is there anything else, or Marie? It looks to me like maybe we have some more people. Is Menglin Lee here?
She's signed in. She's here.
Hi. Yes, I joined a bit late. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. So there you go.
Actually, you've lost some people. So I just want to let you know.
All right. Well, we're not voting on anything exactly here, although I guess can we agree to my submitting this letter, and then anybody who wants to comment on it can at the full board meeting, and I'll just in the report, I'll just summarize the things that we talked about from the meeting that we had with Brian and with Ben. We have no comments on the first on the first item. So I think that I'm not saying we have to end now, but I think at least we've covered the 2 items now that we had to cover for the meeting tonight.
That's good. And before our next month's meeting, the environmental committee will meet and can put some thoughts together.
That's great.
For our next meeting.
That's great.
Dale, you can ask the committee members present to ask you to present this to the board for a vote. You know, however you want to present it. You don't have a quorum, but you can. The members present can make that a motion, and then you can take it to the board.
So if we have a quorum and then somebody leaves and nobody asks for a roll call, I thought that we retained the quorum.
As far as I know, we don't have a quorum now.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a quorum before. You needed 11 for a quorum. You had 10.
I know.
So I just, but based on what Marie said, I think I'd like to, I don't know, make a motion to recommend that Dell present the letter to the full board.
I'll second that.
Who second that? Vega?
I think Keith.
Keith. Although just thinking about it, you may want a board member to second it. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to as a non-board member?
I second it.
Yeah, thank you.
Vega, I second.
Okay, great. So, are there any objections? Okay, so, Marie, I don't see any reason to have a roll call. No one is objecting.
All right.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Have a good
everybody.
night. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy, all. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you.